The process of branding, in its simplest form, is just the process of marking a product with a consistent logo, image, mascot, that sends a message to the consumer. A message of consistency, a message of quality. This process became really important with the advent of mass industrialization, when goods were being produced in factories, and mass transport. Because what that meant is that all kinds of products that people used to buy from a local shopkeeper or a local farmer who they had a relationship with locally were now coming off of trains, trucks, and out of factories. And this was quite actually scary at the turn of the century, because the relationship of trust that you had with that shopkeeper or with that farmer when it was just spooned out of the barrel or scooped out of the barrel was now subverted by these goods coming from far away, being produced in anonymous factories. So the original brands were comforting logos that were often people, like Quaker Oats or Aunt Jemima, that were essentially surrogate relationships. It was like, okay, you're not buying it from the local shopkeeper, you're not buying it from the local farmer, but here is this image that you can relate to. You can form a personal relationship, albeit a fake personal relationship with this mascot, with this figure. But the message was, you can trust it as much as you would trust it if you actually had a real relationship. How did we get from this fairly simple role of the brand of the Aunt Jemima, the Quaker Oats, to these brand tribes that we have now, where we almost follow brands like we would follow rock stars? We organize ourselves into brand tribes. We are a Nike type of person or a Tommy Hilfiger type of person. How did that happen? There were a handful of brands that understood that marketing could play a larger role than simply branding their product as a mark of quality. They understood that they could sell ideas, that they could sell lifestyles. Coca-Cola, Disney, McDonald's, these core American brands became powerful precisely because they understood that they were selling ideas instead of products, that they were selling an idea about family. Coca-Cola was selling the youth lifestyle. In the 60s, they started selling peace and love. They were selling something way more profound than their fairly generic product, which was this black fizzy liquid. Walt Disney understood that he was selling the American dream. He was selling a nostalgic vision of the small-time American town that people felt sad about. They felt that it had disappeared. The CEO of Nike, Phil Knight, says that he had a kind of an epiphany in the mid-'80s where he realized that he didn't want to compete in a commodity marketplace anymore, that he did not want to be a sneaker company, or as he said, a fashion company. He wanted to be a sports company, and that their core image or their core idea was not about their sneakers being better than Reeboks, but was an idea about the nature of sports, and that pure athletic ability and the raw ability of truly superstar athletes like Tiger Woods and Michael Jordan is a kind of metaphor for the American dream. And so he decided to sell that idea. When you have a culture where ideas are not treated as being connected to belief or action, but are just commodity and just to be used and attached, diversity, let's use that to sell Benetton sweaters. Community, let's use that for Starbucks. The ideas themselves are devalued. The best example is Virgin. What's significant about Virgin is that they are so clearly not selling a product. They are selling an idea. And the idea that they're selling is the Virgin-type person. The Virgin-type person kind of bucks authority, sees themselves very much as an individual. They're in their late 20s, early 30s. They see themselves as a nonconformist. Richard Branson, the CEO, the Virgin understood the power of that idea. What he understood is how many people see themselves as rebels. And he found a way to mass produce the desire for individuality. It's quite a feat. So our most powerful ideas are now treated as brand content. The environmental movement is the body shop's identity. Apple has used revolutionary icons like Martin Luther King and Gandhi long after their deaths, as pitchmen for Apple, because allegedly the Apple brand stands for doing things differently, and these men did things differently.
Because the people who are crazy enough to think they can change the world are the ones who do.
Diesel markets to a very self-conscious, ironic consumer. That's their brand identity. Everything is done with a kind of nudge and a wink. IKEA's brand identity, they claim, is democracy, because you can put together your furniture on your own. So you can really be an architect of your own destiny. So our most powerful ideas as citizens, democracy, revolution, these are now mere brand content. There were many of these brand epiphanies where Starbucks would announce, Starbucks is not a coffee company. It is a community company. It is about the idea of the third place, which is not home and not work, but rather a place where people gather. And a lot of these brand epiphanies had a kind of quasi-anthropological approach, where what they were trying to identify was nothing to do with the product itself, but had to do with what consumers were thinking and experiencing while they were consuming the product. Car companies realized that for a lot of young people, what they love most about cars doesn't have that much to do with whatever new feature they've put on. They loved the act of listening to music with their friends in the car, road trips. That was the most thrilling thing that you could do in a car. So car commercials started saying very, very little about the features in any given car, but would just show a group of beautiful 20-somethings in the car, bopping up and down and singing like crazy. You consuming this product is being sold back to you. And it's not just about creating associations within advertising. That's the old way of doing things. Hire an advertising firm to create an association between a desirable lifestyle and your product, i.e. you show footage of people consuming your product. That's the old way. The new way is to go out into the culture and find out where people actually are doing those things, where your brand idea lives independently. And then what you try to do is you try to merge with it, or you try to buy it, you try to own it. If your brand identity has to do with the spirit of rock and roll, in the case of Tommy Hilfiger, then what you try to do is you try, through many different ways at once, to merge with that spirit. Through sponsoring, first by starting to sponsor concerts, then by getting musicians like the Rolling Stones or Sheryl Crow to sign deals to only wear your clothing. Then you get them in your ads. Then you start buying music festivals outright. So you have the bands kind of performing in your ad. Then your ads don't even need those rock stars anymore, because you are a rock star. Like the goal is not to sponsor them, but to grab their energy and their identity so that you exist, your brand has the same cultural role as the rock star. You have followers of your own. You are the star, as opposed to sponsoring somebody else's star. Tommy Hilfiger wasn't the first company to put the logo on the outside of the clothing as opposed to on the inside of the collar. Lacoste and Polo had been doing that for a couple of decades. But there was a difference in scale, because it wasn't like the little alligator in the corner. It was the human-sized billboard, or almost like a walking, talking Tommy Hilfiger doll. And the measure of a successful brand, more and more, is not whether it's truly a mark of quality on a product, but how well it stretches. If it's a successful cola, can it also be a line of clothing? If it's a line of clothing, can it be a house paint? If it's a coffee chain, can it be a magazine? And so more and more what you have is this stratosphere of the super brand, where everyone is everything, and these are kind of imperial powers that are constantly pushing against their own boundaries. and saying, no, we're not just a clothing company. We can be a music company. And we're not just a music company. We can have our own planes. So you have this stratosphere of warring mega brands that want to be everywhere and be everything.